of the chapters in this book that we've been kind of using as our guide. I understand every family has a different philosophy on quote-unquote dating or courting or whatever. So please just know that I just picked that word because he picked that word. If your kids are not going to quote-unquote date, that's fine. The principles that we're talking about are things that are going to be true no matter what your approach is. I just have always felt like that's the decision of a family. You make that call for your kids. I hope that your decision is obviously based on Scripture and what God would want for your family. But please don't come up after class and be like, that says date and my kids aren't dating. And I'll be like, that's great, because that's fine. So this year, my father-in-law is 63. And last month, he and his brother, who is older than Bill is my father-in-law, they hiked 100 plus miles on the Appalachian Trail. He told me he was doing this. I said, why? He said, my brother wanted to do this. I'm going to do it with. They carried the big packs and everything. I mean, he did at 63 what would kill me at 35. And so when he came back, it took him 10 days. When he came back, he had all sorts of stories. And he was talking about hiking this trail. They hiked the portion that's in Virginia. And obviously, as you hike along this trail, there are other people out there hiking the trail too. Some of them are going different directions. Some of them you kind of crisscross. And each night, they would stay at just like a camp. Usually it was just like some wooden beds. You put your sleeping bag down on, you sleep for the night, and then you keep going. He said some of the people that they met on the trip were very, very unique. And I was like, well, they're out hiking in the woods. You're going to meet some unique people. I'm sure there are some people who met him and were like, oh, I met some unique people. Met this couple of brothers in their 60s who, for some reason, decided hiking the Appalachian Trail was a great idea. And so some people they met and they were like, that's great. We should probably let them hike up ahead a little bit, give us some space. Some people he said that they met were super nice, but they were going opposite directions on the trail. Just didn't work. But as they were hiking, they did meet a couple people who happened to be going the same direction they were on the trail. And so they got along, and eventually they kind of teamed up and served as an encouragement for each other as they hiked. He said it ended up being really nice. There's this people we didn't know, but once we found out they're moving the same direction we were, just felt natural that we travel together. I tell this story because I think that should be our child's approach to finding a spouse. Rather than going and trying to find someone to travel life with, you start moving in the direction that you're supposed to be moving. Somewhere along the way, you're going to meet people. And sometimes those people seem really great. But guess what? They're moving in a different direction. They're not moving in the same direction you are. And so our paths cross, but they continue their way, we continue our way. Some people may be moving the same direction, but the personality's just not there. And that's fine. We're moving. But occasionally, as you move your way through life and you are moving in the direction that you are supposed to be moving, you meet a person that is running in that same direction. And you go, wait a second. This is a person that I would like to travel with. And so we're going to talk a little bit tonight about who to date or who to pursue, whatever you want to call it. And then next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the process. And I say that not like the specific process, but more some things I think we should encourage our kids to avoid and to look out for as they do begin looking for that person that they may marry someday. This is a tough subject to teach in a Bible class because, as you would guess, there are 0 verses in the Bible about dating. There's just none, like 0 verses. However, there is a lot in the Bible about evaluation. Like when you read through the Proverbs, there are plenty of warnings to young women about the type of men that they should avoid. And there are plenty of passages to young men about the types of women to avoid. And those are not passages written to people who are married. Those are written to young people who aren't married yet and are saying, you should evaluate the people you spend time with. You should evaluate the person that you are going to spend the rest of your life with. And so while I know dating is not a subject we necessarily see in Scripture, that idea of evaluating someone and trying to see if they are a good match for us both personality-wise and spiritually, it is a biblical principle. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about what he in his book calls a consumer mentality. We as Americans are consumers. Like, that's what we do. We just want to consume things. As the youth minister, when I drive the church vans, I don't know if it's because kids don't know or they just don't care that I can hear them, but I hear all sorts of conversations in the vans. And without fail, every time we take a big trip, I will hear a group of girls break into some sort of discussion along the trip in which they begin to outline what their dream guy is. Here, and they build their wish list. And I mean, I keep my eyes on that road. I keep my mouth shut. I am glad that Carrie did not build such a list, or if she did, that she quickly realized it was no good for her and she threw it away. Because those lists, and I understand, they're girls, they're having fun, but those lists tend to be very temporary physical things. I want a guy that's tall. I want a guy that's rich. I want to marry a doctor. I want to marry, some of them are really specific. I want a tall guy with blonde hair that he wears up in a bun and is artsy, and you're like, wow, you're, too close to home? Hey, I'm telling you, I'm not making this stuff up, folks. And again, I understand that sometimes those conversations are just fun. You're just talking about, I think every young person has an idea of what, when they grow up, that person might look like. Unfortunately, I think we have young people who are trying to build a spouse as if they were building a combo meal at Taco Bell. It's like, what do I want? And I put these things together, and so when I find that person, it is not a person that I have found that seems like a person I can trust. I am looking for a specific thing. It's like a robot. And unless I find that person. And so the problem with doing that, we're going to look at a couple different reasons. But at the very center of that is the idea that involves me trying to find the person that I think completes me. The reason I want a tall guy is because when we take pictures together, I don't want to be taller than him, right? I remember having that conversation with Carrie. She's like, I want to wear high heels to the banquet, but then I'll be taller than you. I'm like, I'll wear them. No? She didn't like that. But we begin to build those things because we feel like that is the person that is best going to fulfill what I need. And so here are some of the problems that arise when we allow our kids to develop that consumer mentality. Number one is it sets unrealistic expectations. We build a person that doesn't exist. Oh, they've got to be rich and handsome, and they never are mean to anyone. I'm like, okay, wait a second. Like the person you're describing, they don't exist. And every person that they meet along the way is going to be held to that standard. And so when I meet someone, if you don't meet my standard, guess what? You couldn't possibly be the person I'm looking for because I'm taller than you, or you don't make enough money, or you're not pursuing the job that I thought I was going to pursue. You could ask Carrie. I guarantee you when she was young, she never, ever, ever thought she was going to marry a youth minister. This did not plan that. Her dad is an engineer, her brother's an engineer, her uncle's an engineer. They are the ones that would also like to go hike the Appalachian Trail, so I don't know what she was thinking. But I'm sure she thought, I'll probably marry an engineer. And nope, I have a hard time building IKEA shelves. But it sets an unrealistic expectation. So thankfully for me, Carrie met someone that she went, hey, that's not what I had in mind, but it works. And so we need to encourage our kids. Look, when they're talking about what they want in that dream guy or dream girl, it can be fun, and that's fine, but also help them to understand that you don't always know. And that's the second point. We don't always know what we want. I can't tell you how many of my guy friends who used to describe exactly what they were looking for in a girl ended up marrying someone who is nothing like that. Because I think frequently we think, oh, what I'm looking for is someone who is like this, or like this, or like this. And we end up marrying someone completely different than that. And that's okay, because sometimes along the way we realize, oh, when I was 14, big shock, I didn't know what was best for me in life. And so we don't always know what we're going to want, and so it's important for us not to set those expectations too early. This one's important too, and comes straight out of Scripture. Charm is deceitful. Beauty is vain. This is a good message for our guys too, but I especially tell it to girls. Anyone can be a very, very good version of themselves for an hour. Like, if you want like A plus Jeremy, I can give you the very best now. Even A plus Jeremy is still not great, but like I have talked to young people who say, oh yeah, but we went on this date and they're funny and they're charming and they're nice and they say all the right things. I'm like, of course they did, because it's a first date. Like, you are going to bring your very best. But charm can be deceitful. People can pretend to be charming, and then you find out, guess what? Maybe not as charming as I thought. Beauty is vain. It fades. Someday these great looks, oh boy, that was hard to say. It's going to go away, right? Looks fade. And so when you have young people who are just chasing after, a girl or guy because they're attractive, well, guess what? That's going to go away. Not everybody is a George Clooney that ages perfectly and you're like, wow, he's however years old. I couldn't make that reference in the youth class because they're like, who's George Clooney? Believe me, he was a big deal, okay? Not everybody ages like that. And so we need to make sure our kids aren't building what they want around the physical, because those are the things that don't last. What happens if I've heard of couples who one of them is in a terrible accident and their face becomes, scarred. What then? If your attraction and your commitment to that person is based on the physical, all that goes out the window, right? And so charm is deceitful, beauty is vain. And then the last one, I think, is just dehumanizing. I'm not looking for a person. I am looking for this perfect being that really doesn't exist. And it's unfair because chances are if they hold me to the same standards that I'm holding everybody else to, I'm not going to reach that. I am not saying that we should tell our kids to settle. That is not what I'm saying, because I think there are young people who do that. They're like, oh, I'm never going to get that dream guy or dream girl anyways, and so the first person that comes along that shows me any sort of attention, that I'm just going to lock it up right there and be done with it. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to encourage our kids not to have that consumer mentality in which I build what I want in my mind, and then unless you fit that, then it's not going to work out, okay? So I think what we should encourage our kids to look for is twofold. Number one is character, and number two is chemistry. Character being the person that they are on the inside, and chemistry being how we interact with them, how we connect, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as we go along. But let's start with character. What do we mean by character? Okay, first of all, when we talk about character, we're talking about the same allegiance. I understand this is a subject where people are divided on. And so rather than me going through this as if like these are hard, fast rules, we're just going to look at some verses and we're going to understand that couples make it work in other ways. I understand that. And there are some times where it works. But for our kids, for their faith, like we want to do our very best for them. And so when we talk about same allegiance, I'm talking about teaching our kids that you are looking for a person who is moving in the same direction that you are. Spiritually, they have the same spiritual goals. this guy, A.W. Tozer, said, the most important thing about a person is what he or she thinks about God. I don't think young people think that way. They don't view that as the most important. What are they good at? What do they look like? What are their aspirations as far as careers go? But the reason that the most important thing about a person is what he or she thinks about God is because that is going to shape my values. What I believe about God will shape my values in life, and then my values are going to shape what my goals are in life. And my goals are going to determine where I'm moving in life. And so imagine you are in the middle of Texas with another person, and you are handcuffed together, and one of you is trying to walk to California, and the other one of you is trying to walk to Florida. What's going to happen? Number one, you're going to get really tired because those places are very far away. But eventually, you're either both going to get tired and give up, or you are going to drag that person with you. Whatever it takes, you're just going to drag that person. There are young people who are getting into relationships like that. I have a person I'm interested in because they're attractive and they're fun and they're likable, all those things that you're looking for. But as far as spiritual things, they are not moving in the same direction that I am. They're moving that way and I am moving that way. And that should be what matters most. There's a passage in 2 Corinthians chapter 6. I think it's talking about... I think it can be applied to other areas of life, but certainly I think at the heart of it, Paul would say, is who we choose to spend our life with as a spouse. 2 Corinthians 6, verse 14, he says, he uses this reference from Deuteronomy. He says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? So imagine you're a farmer. You've got those, the yoke that goes across the back of the oxen. You've got an oxen, big, strong animal. That's what he's created for. And then next to the oxen, you've got like a little short, stubby-legged donkey. And you've got those two things yoked together. What's going to happen is eventually those two animals are actually working against each other as they try to plow, because the oxen is strong and he knows what he's supposed to be doing. And so he is pulling that donkey, but the donkey is stubborn, and so he pulls back and you get uneven lines. So Paul takes this farming advice from the Old Testament and he says, same is true with relationships. You can't expect you to be bonded. I don't think he's talking about any relationship. I don't think he's saying don't have friends that are non-Christians. But I think Paul's point is when you bind yourself in a marriage relationship to someone who's an unbeliever, it's going to be really hard. Maybe not impossible. I've heard awesome stories about couples that get married and one is not a believer and the other is, and the non-believer becomes a Christian. And those are great stories, and we need individuals who do that. But I think for every one of those stories, there's probably 100 stories of a person who, because they married an unbeliever, eventually their faith just became too hard for them. And so look, I don't know where you stand on whether your kids are even allowed to date yet or whatever. Again, that's your decision. But I'm just telling you, when they're in your home, you have say-so. You can't control their minds. I get that. But you do have say-so over who they get to spend significant time with. And I can't make you, but I'm just telling you, I would encourage you to remind your kids how important it is to look for someone who is a Christian. Now, the term Christian gets thrown around a lot because I've heard youth kids say, oh, he is a Christian or she is a Christian. Oh, I'm like, oh, great, where do they go to church? Well, they're in between churches right now. And by in between, I mean they don't go to church. But he's just a really good guy, or she's just a really good girl. I know she's not a official Christian, but I can just tell they've got a good head on their shoulders. Maybe. I know lots of non-Christians who are nice, good people, people that I would love to have as a neighbor. There's a difference between wanting someone as a neighbor and wanting someone that I share all my closest conversations with, who I go to for advice. And so don't allow your kids to settle because, well, they said they are Christian. They wear, a T-shirt that says, I don't know religious T-shirts. I just wear blank T-shirts. But this isn't a person who just claims Christianity. This is a person who lives out their faith, okay? So when we're talking about same allegiance, I'm talking about raising up young people who the first thing on their checklist of someone that they want to spend their life together is someone that is going to help get them closer to God. Not someone that they are going to have to drag into a relationship with God. This is a person who in everything is going to make me a better person. That's what it means by same allegiance, okay? Now, number 2, not just same allegiance, but we're looking for someone who is pursuing that allegiance. I'm not going to name their names, but there are kids in our youth group who I'm sure people are like, oh, well, I go to church with them, so they would be a great spouse. There's a difference between someone who says they share the same allegiance as you and someone who is pursuing it. And so I think it's important for us not just to teach our kids to be looking for Christians, but to look for Christians who are active in their faith, who are pursuing God with everything they have. They'll say, he's in our youth group, or he must be a good guy. He goes to a Christian college. His dad is a preacher. That's not the same as pursuing God in their life. Those should be things that our kids are looking for. And so the reasons for that, the reason you want someone that is pursuing God in their life, number 1, you want the benefit of their wisdom. So your children, a time will come in their life where they want to be able to sit down with their spouse and get sound, good, biblical advice. Like, what should I do? And look, if a person does not share my same core beliefs, I know that everything they say, I'm going to have to see it through that filter. It's going to change. Hey, this came up at work. I feel like it's unethical. What should I do? It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I don't know why you're making a big deal about this. That's a person you should be able to confide in, go to for advice, go to for a good biblical opinion. Psalm chapter 1, it talks about the person who has wisdom being like a tree that is rooted, right, by streams of water. That's what our kids should desire. Someone that they are sure and confident in their faith, that they can go to and benefit from their wisdom. Proverbs 31, verse 26, the classic verse about what young guys should be looking for in a lady, right? Proverbs 31, verse 26, she opens her mouth with wisdom. The teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Like, boy, girl, doesn't matter. We want them looking for someone who is going to give them good, sound, biblical wisdom. That's not going to come from someone who is a casual Christian, who's just, I come because my family comes. No, we want someone who's pursuing God. Okay? So we want their wisdom. We also, when you look for a person who is pursuing God, you have the peace of their integrity. So because I have confidence in their integrity, I can have peace in life. That's not to say that every unbeliever, you have to be constantly worried that they're not going to be faithful to you. Or that just because they're a believer, they may not be faithful. But I do know that when they are a pursuer of God, you can have some peace in the idea that, hey, he's going away for a business trip. I'm not worried. I know him. I know he's a good man. He pursues God in his life. Not perfect. They're not saying they're looking for a person who doesn't ever make mistakes, but like we want our kids to, when they marry, they have someone that they can get good sound wisdom from, and someone that they can have peace that like this person is living their life the way God wants them to. Okay, finally, when it comes to character, we want to encourage our kids to find someone who is keeping the same pace that they are. And this is what I mean by that. You can find someone who is a good Christian, who is living their life the way that they should, but because of where you are in your faith and where they are in their faith, doesn't work. For example, You may have a kid who their dream, their desire is to go into the mission field, get out there, whether it's Africa, overseas somewhere, they want to get in there and they want to be in the mission field. You should consider that when you're looking for a spouse. There may be a person who they're a great Christian, they're faithful, they're at church every week, they're spending time in God's Word, but for them, they're not at a stage in their faith where they are ready, and those are things you should consider. I have heard multiple young people within the past year when talking about someone that they were interested in, and this is a person they knew was immature, have said, well, I know they will mature more. Like over time, they'll mature. I'm sure Carrie said that at one point, and now she's like, oh, he just hasn't. I think because we find a person who we like and we get along with and we find them attractive, we want to believe that somewhere down the line, then they'll finally, get over the hill and be what I need in my spiritual walk, and they may not. And again, I'm not saying like, oh, you're a weak Christian, let me just kick you to the curb. But our kids need to be like, what are your goals in life, spiritually speaking? And there may be some people who are good Christians, but they're just not running at that pace you are. There is nothing wrong with telling your kid, you don't want someone that's going to hold you back in what you're striving for spiritually, okay? So, character is important. I think the Bible teaches this should be at the core of what our kids are looking for, of who our kids are looking for. If I find a person that the chemistry is perfect, but their character is off, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter but we're like best friends. That's great. But you're moving in different directions. You are moving in different directions, and so it doesn't work, okay? My father-in-law mentioned lots of people that they met on their trip. They'd sit, talk to overnight, and they're like, man, I wish these guys were going that way. I really get along with these guys. But guess what? Next morning, they're like, oh, you're hiking that way? We're going this way. You can't be together. Like, you're going different directions, all right? Character, it's at the center. But I do think it's important for us to teach our kids this is important too. You're not just looking for a person who has character. You've got to find a person you have good chemistry with. I'm not just talking about physical. Here's what we mean by chemistry. Number one, religiously. I know because I went to a Christian college where showing up on campus, you think, hey, everybody thinks like I think, right? Everybody has the same views that I have, and I can remember within the first couple weeks having multiple conversations where I was like, not what I thought. And I met lots of girls who are great, really nice girls, but I know had something happened with those girls, it would have been challenging because they view things differently than me. I'm not saying necessarily like they're so far off that we just don't see eye to eye at all. Even sometimes just like the kind of church you want to attend, the church that you're comfortable being a member at, the types of ministry those things matter. And I think there are kids who those things come up and they think, well, I'll change that. Like that will change. Like we can talk through that. I know they feel comfortable with that and I don't, but over time, look, if you have those conversations and they change, that's one thing. But don't go through those relationships banking on those things changing somewhere down the line. Religious compatibility is a huge, huge deal. Some of you who are married, I was talking with Kristen the other day about the things you and Kevin disagree on. And Carrie and I disagree on things. But the things we disagree on are things like, what did you say? The air conditioning in the car. By the way, same. I get in the car, I don't know how you feel, but for me, there needs to be some sort of air on. Otherwise, the car gets stuffy. Some of you are like, what is this guy talking about? Some of you are nodding, and you know what I'm talking about. Like, Carrie gets in, and she goes, it's cold, turns the air off. And I'm like, it's going to get stuffy. What you need to do is you need to adjust the temperature of the air. No, she's not that. Hey, that's fine.
Danger.
That's fine. What?
Danger.
Yeah, I know, danger. That's when you wish you had the evacuation button and it just launches you out and you're just done. Yeah.
They make cars with dual air conditioner like settings now.
I know. We finally got.
Still doesn't
That's right. Yeah, let's talk about it now.
So, guys. Hey, look, you will never find a person you agree with everything about. Carrie is a diehard, for-life Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I would rather vomit. I love the Denver Broncos because it's God's team, Marlene. What? Sunsets are blue and orange. Think about it. No, sunsets are black and gold. That doesn't even make sense. If it is, something's happening. You need to seek shelter. Look, those things, we make it work. That is different than disagreeing on the type of church that we should attend and how we view things spiritually. Again, there may be some minor differences, but at the end of the day, Carrie and I, we don't have to fight or disagree on those things because we're on the same page. And it's a nice place to be, and we need to encourage our kids to be looking for that. Fight about the air conditioning. Fight about who needs more covers at night, which apparently she does. Fight about whatever. Those are trivial things, though, okay? Religious compatibility, chemistry, big deal, okay? Number 2, yes, you want someone who is socially compatible with you. Someone that, like, you get along, you enjoy spending time with. Again, I think this happens to be a problem with girls more often than with guys, though maybe guys just don't share, so you don't know. A girl thinks, well, like, he's going to be a doctor, so he's going to make money, and, like, he's a really good guy, and he's really plugged into the community, and, like, oh, that's great. And when you guys spend time together, how is that? I'm bored. It's boring. But, like, if we're in a big group, it's great. But, like, when it's just us, like, he's kind of bland, but, like, he's going to be a doctor. Did I say that? He's going to be a doctor, and he's going to make a lot. Congratulations. You can be a doctor, and you can raise his kids, and you don't have to spend any time together. That'd be great. Again, I know for some of us, we hear that, and we're like, why would you not look for someone that's socially compatible? But I think there are kids who they're like, well, no, we're not, like, best friends. In fact, if I could get away from her and just, like, go spend some time with my friends. I like this relationship. I like the idea of us. Just telling you, like, there are times where I know Carrie needs a break from me. I'm a lot to handle, if you are surprised by that. And there are times where I like to go and get away and spend time with my guy friends. But I'm just telling you, Carrie is my best friend. Like, there is no one I enjoy spending time with more than Carrie. That's how it is. I think there's a lot of relationships where that's not the case. They're like, well, do you enjoy being together? Yeah, like, for the most part. But, like, he's really cute. I'm like, yeah, sure. And when he's old and not as cute, but he's just as boring and probably more boring because you get more boring the older you get, like, you're going to regret that, right? Socially compatible, that is important. We need to find someone that we get along with, that enjoy our friends. I had friends in college who met someone, started a relationship, and then they stopped spending time with us. And I was like, what's going on? Oh, she just doesn't really like my group of friends. And I'm like, dude, you know the reason you hang out with us is because you're exactly like us, right? Which means if she doesn't like us, she doesn't like the real you, which means you're not being you when you're around her. And guess what? Those relationships never worked out. They don't work out. And so tell your kid, if the person you are interested in does not like your friends, that is a person not worth your time. Because those are the people you care most about, you enjoy spending time with. If they don't like that, then why is that going to work, okay? All of that goes into social chemistry. This one I touched on a little bit already, but vocationally speaking, look, I know Georgia's one of them. I know we've got some young kids who like the idea of the mission field is something that is just intriguing to them. The idea of traveling and going overseas and being either part of a church plant or part of a work that's already going on, like those things matter to them. And so you need them to understand that when you're in the process of searching for that person, you take those things into consideration. Because if you find that guy and he's just perfect, he's just great, Like, we just have so much fun together. And what are his thoughts on doing mission work? Oh, he doesn't really want to do that. But he's just the one. I just know he's the one. Like, okay. What about 10 years down the road when you resent him because you really felt called to go do mission work and he didn't want to do it? Those things matter. This right here is why it's so important to teach our kids that there's not just like that one person out there that's your soulmate that you're waiting on. Because when you meet that person, you're like, well, it just feels right. I know we don't feel compatible in a lot of these areas, but I just can tell, like, this is the person. It's okay to keep looking. And if you don't find that person that's moving in the same direction that you are, keep going. You keep moving, okay? So vocationally speaking, I was blessed in that Carrie, not when I first met her. I think when I told her I wanted to be in ministry, she was like, oh, that's great. I hope you find that special girl. That was probably when she was going on dates with my brother. But you know what? Hey, the guy can rebound. He can't shoot, but he can rebound. Like, that being something that I wanted to pursue, I needed to find someone that was okay being a minister's wife, right? If you've got a girl who her dream has always been to be a teacher, she just wants to teach, but she finds a guy that his idea of a woman is you stay at home with the kids and you don't teach, that matters. Those are things to consider. Last one, yes, physically, there should be chemistry. Just talk to your kids about what that should and shouldn't look like. I'm not saying you should build this wish list and wait till that person comes along. But I do think we have young people who get a little further into that season of their life. And because pressure from mom and dad is coming or pressure from other friends, you know what happens to their standards? They just start bringing them down. And you get someone that are like, hey, what do you think about this guy? I'm not really attracted to him. Right, but like, he's a good guy, right? Yeah, he is. He's a good guy. Do you think you could like get attracted to him? Let me try. No, it's not working. Look, the physical, there's the reason we're doing it last, after we've talked about character and after we've talked about all these other areas in chemistry. But it still does matter. And look, it's okay if that develops more, but your kids should never go into a relationship in which they're like, I'm not really attracted to them, but I feel like they could benefit me in this way, because that creates problems. It creates a foothold for temptation down the road, because this is a person I'm not attracted to. And I thought it would get better, and it didn't. It actually, as I've learned their habits and their little tics, I actually find them less attractive. These things matter. We just need to help our kids understand where in the ranking that should fall. Usually, and you usually see it with college kids, what happens is you show up on campus, and what's the first thing you notice about people? What they look like, right? I get that. That's the first thing we see. You can't close your eyes and walk around. What do you want to do with your life? I want to be a missionary. Oh, whew. Not ugly, thank you. You can't, like, that is what we see first. But just because we see it first, that does not mean that has to be what matters the most. I know friends who, when they first met their spouse now, they found them attractive, but not like, drop dead gorgeous or anything. And then over time, they realized as they got to know the person, realized, oh, like I was just shallow. I was looking for something specific and didn't think that she fit that, and I was wrong. Physical compatibility is important. It's just not the most important, okay? Look, if you take one thing away from all of this, I just hope you will take this. The number one thing in life for your kid is what is your purpose in life? My purpose, to glorify God, to seek after Him, to bring glory to Him, and I want to find a person that is going to help me in that purpose. If they are moving the same direction I am, look, I'm running this race, I'm moving in the direction that I want to. Oh, cute boy, cross my path. But guess what? He's going that way. That was a nice run in. Nice to meet you. See you later. I'm going to keep running. Keep running. Oh, here's a person coming straight at me. She's funny. She's fun to be around, and she's going that way. Bye. Nice to see you. Okay? And then eventually what happens is if you are pursuing that purpose, you are going to see a person that is running in the same direction. And you go, oh, wait a second. They're moving that way. If your kid is moving that way and that person isn't coming, we don't readjust our purpose because we're desperate. We don't start. No. You just keep running. You keep moving in that direction. And eventually, hopefully, they will find a person that is going to help push them forward in that purpose. I know that's hard. I know because I work with teenagers. Like, they go to school with non-Christians, and they spend, and I get the challenges that come with it. But I'm just telling you, you would rather have your kid frustrated with you for a little while now because you encourage them not to spend time with a certain individual than to watch their life get derailed because they pursued someone that is not pushing them forward in their purpose. All right. Next week, we're going to spend some time talking about how to date. And believe me when I say I am not giving you dating tips because I was not a pro. But we are going to talk about some things we should encourage our kids to be careful about.